which way to go. I need you.
Hey everyone, I'm Final again from YAM. I wanted to talk about a subject that is relatively scary for a lot of church folk. And the title, as you will see, is something that is like, I guess a bit questionable. But there's a case study here for this. So, as you know, we live in a world where people basically do what they want until it causes them problems, right? And you know, when you look at any situation that you arrive at in your life where it became such a huge problem that you almost ask yourself how it began, if you were able to trace it back, it was probably something that was really simple. Like, people are not just out here chopping up people on a bus. I mean, obviously that may have happened in certain places. And obviously we know that there's so many different types of things that occur around the world that are controversial, that cause everybody to stand still for a minute. But I want to look at this topic because this is something that anybody, I'm actually convinced anybody can fall into the trap of this. And my case study for this is taken from 2 Samuel, chapter 11. The story is about David, who is obviously probably one of the most famous Bible characters, you know, because of the whole Goliath story. And Goliath's big, David is small, stone knocks him out. Suddenly, like, he's the biggest thing that's happened to Israel. And a lot of people identify with that story. But let's try identify with this one. So, verse 1, and it came to pass after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to the battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in the eventide that David arose off of his bed, walked up on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman washing herself. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned into her house. Now, the story goes on to talk about how she basically conceived a child. And obviously David was kind of shook because he's thinking, oh, hold on. I didn't expect that to happen. So he sets about creating a couple plans. And his plan is, by any standard, an outrageous plan. The plan wasn't, and God forgive me here, but it wasn't, let's find a way to get rid of the child. Back in them times, I couldn't even give you an educated guess as to how they would do that. If anyone wants to sort of at me, please do. Education is key. But his plan is mad. And at first he sends for her husband, Uriah. And, you know, he tries to invite him over and, you know, get him drunk. And basically his whole purpose is to get the husband of this woman to lay with her. For those of you who are struggling with what that could mean, to have sex with her, right? David needed Uriah to have sex with his wife so that the prospect of a child coming around would allow him to believe, oh yeah, we're having a child. But there was one explicit problem in this story. Uriah was so dedicated. Uriah was such a good child. You know them good boys in classroom or girls? They're so good, yeah, that if somebody gets an answer wrong, they go, no miss, it's actually 45. Like, if you could think of any situation in class where you just had that good child. I have nothing against good children, by the way. This is not me trying to destroy the image of children that are well behaved and want to be forthcoming in classroom. Because that's better than sleeping in class. Anyway, Uriah was such a good soldier. He was so dedicated to the kingdom. Every time David came out with a prayer, he was like, no, how can I do that? You know, these men are out here, you know, dedicating their life, dying on the battlefield. Why would I go home to my wife? David must have been like, oh, you soft guy. So he sets up another plan. And, you know, all of his plans basically fell. And the final thing David thought to do is taken from 2 Samuel 11. And basically in verse 15 he says, and he wrote a letter, this is David, saying, set Uriah in front or in the forefront of the hottest battle. So basically put him like where the deepest level of Game of Thrones shenanigans is happening, so that and he says, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. Imagine seeing that letter. I watched the actual film of this, and this actor was excellent because he got the scroll, yeah. He looked at it, and you have the voiceover of David. So imagine you're hearing, Joab, could you do me a favour? Could you put man like Uriah in front of the battle, fam? Put him where it's getting hot, fam. And make sure he's dead by tonight. So he reads it, you hear the voiceover, and then Uriah's there smiling. He's like, you know, as he delivers the message to Joab. Joab is the general. He's leading the army. And Joab he's looking at Uriah and he's like, fam, you're going to die. You are going to die. And you don't even know it. So this situation got so deep, it was not even David just plotting to kill the husband of a woman that he saw from his window, or saw through her window when he was on a rooftop. Not only did he go to kill the husband, but he had other people conspiring to get rid of this guy. And this all started, ladies and gentlemen, with a look. Now, we might have this premise. There's people who, I guess, are on a celibacy project, whereby they're like, okay, you know, because at the end of the day, a lot of us have fallen in that regard, right? We may have had a previous life when we weren't or were Christians, where we were just living our best life, so to speak, right? So people have history of our past, okay. But there's this kind of behavior often that people have where it's like, all right, you know what? I'll look, but I won't touch. And then a situation occurs and there's touching. And it's like, oh, well, I'll touch, but I won't enter. Then a situation occurs where actually, yeah, you enter or we're entered. And then you're like, well, okay, nah, you know what, nah, maybe just once a week. Nobody really says it like that. But my point is that there is a progression. Like, you didn't go to that place straight away. You arrived there in a pursuit of living a pure life or living to a standard that is acceptable. You kind of gave yourself a rule maybe and said, no, I'm seeing this, like, right now it's summertime, innit? So you're seeing it, but I won't touch. But you know what? This is where we have to understand the standard of holiness that we're actually trying to even attain to. Jesus, when he spoke to the Pharisees, the religious people of that time, people who had an attitude of, we aren't touching anybody out here. We're pure. Like, what are you talking about? We're just here. We're just doing what we do. Jesus was like, if you even look, if you even look on a woman in this way, you've already committed adultery in your heart. That's that's a problem for all of you. I'm not pointing the finger here because we're all guilty at some point. But what Jesus was challenging is the fact that you think you're running things because you've created a set of rules. But I just told you this story here. I'm going to go back again just to reference the point at which it became a problem. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. David was walking on a rooftop. I can't even imagine what this scene looks like, because he must have had a Cali looking like setup. Like, he must have been able to see everything. And so he sees this woman. He didn't just see her. He looked and he noticed she was beautiful. And that was enough for him to plot something. Something that was so unadulteratedly stupid. The more I actually think about this story, like, it was even the inquiry as to, wait, isn't that the daughter of, and isn't that the husband, the wife of? That would be a point where most men would be like, nah, she's taken from. But David was like, nah. What? I've been slaying thousands out here. What are you telling me? I'm going to slay one more. So he took it upon himself. And the point I'm making is this. Back to those people who are out here on a celibacy project, on an abstinence project. Why am I calling it a project? Because what can happen is that when you are trying to live a life of purity, you make up rules sometimes, and obviously we've got to do these things because we're living in a modern era where at the end of the day, you've got the dating scene, you've got nightlife, and you've got all these different things. Half of those things I just spoke about, we shouldn't even necessarily be involved enough to get there. But ultimately, you can end up in some situations that are tricky. And you got to assess, actually, no, maybe I shouldn't go to the house. Maybe I shouldn't do this, do that. But the point is that one thing can turn into another. And before you know it, you're trying to kill somebody. Now, that sounds mad to people. Doesn't have to even be in a physical sense. It could be metaphorical. Because when a look turns into murder, it was never planned. I don't think David was planning to kill anybody that day. Unless he was going to be drafted into war and whatnot. I have no detail of the situation at the time. But clearly, there were some men who were out to continue into a battle. But he had a battle of his own. And when we're looking at our lives, we look at what Christ said about, listen, if you even look, you've committed adultery. Like, this is where we have to understand that there is a level that we're attaining to in this relationship with God. And I want to stress that word relationship because I've said this previously, that this is not a lifestyle. This is a relationship. There is a relationship at stake with everything that we do. And the Bible talks about in 1 Corinthians, it says, know ye not that your body is the temple of the living God. And it talks about fornication. And that when you sin in that way, it's the only sin that's against the body. Why is that even mentioned? What is the significance of that? Because your body is where God is. It's where He resides. In a relationship with us, He resides in our body. So if we're out here using it in a way that we shouldn't be, what are we doing to the Spirit of God that is housed in us? I'm talking to Christian people, people who have accepted God into their life. How we use our bodies is important, and you might take care of your body. You might have a mentality where you're saying, oh, no, well, you know what, I'm not really about this or that. But remember, it took a look. We have to address the way we carry ourselves. This is a challenge to myself and to anybody watching, because at the end of the day, we're human beings, and we have to deal on a daily basis with temptations and arguments and whatever it is that you have to go through. And there is always a decision that you have to make. In this particular subject line, for me, like historically, I've made some pretty silly decisions. And when I trace it back, and I'm like, how on earth did this actually begin? How did I get here? I'm not even like this. Like, have you ever got into a point where you lost yourself so deeply that you're like, what? This is not even me. How did I get to the point where I have to defend myself for this thing? If you're somebody who you've grown up, in church, you grew up in God's things, you grew up around godly people, or you even got grafted into it, later on in your life, whatever your story, but you find yourself in a situation where you're like, how? When I trace mine back, do you know? I'm gonna be real. It began with a look. You're scrolling on WhatsApp. You could be on Twitter. You can be on Insta. It takes a scroll. You see somebody, you know them. You're like, oh, yeah, right on. I used to know you, One thing turns into another. And I'm not even against dating and the idea that people get married and whatever. This is not that. This is not that, because that is the same world, but it's, there is an approach. That's another video. But the eyes that David looked at Bathsheba with was one of lust. This is the topic of this video. We're talking about lust here, because lust is the one spirit that will lead you into doing things that you never ever thought you'd do. Show of hands. How many of you have done something that you said that you would never do that? I'd never do that. I'd never be with this type of person. I'd never get into a situation where X, Y, Z. I'm not about that life. That's not me. And suddenly now you're like, oh, well, it was only that one time. Well, I'm not here to attack, because I'm not the standard out here. I'm attaining to something right now. I'm on a journey, and I don't promote these things I'm talking about. But this has been something that I've had to deal with in the past. And the only way to deal with it is to face God. How do you do that? Through His Word, through prayer, accountability. You've got to have some people around you who are believing in God on your behalf, who are helping to take you from X to Y, who are able to say, no, fam, no, you're going a bit too far there. No, don't go there. Don't answer the phone. No, don't ring the back. No, leave it. Like, you need some accountability. The Bible says, in the multitude of counsel there is safety. Yeah, there's a couple things that we need in this life, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a picture. There's always going to be a message. And some of those things they're not coming from good places, and you know it. And you might feel that bit of gas, like, yeah, you know what? That one, potentially that one. But what did your life look like when you were indulging in these things? Well, what did it look like when you just started to do your own thing? What do you now find yourself praying to God about and having to release yourself from? What soul tie do you now wish you never had because of that one time or several? Or the fact that you were able to kind of do what you wanted to do and, well, nobody can see you. Oh, it was only, like, they weren't together. Oh, no, it was just a thing, innit? Like, obviously, you know, we're both Christian. That does exist. Listen, when we toy around with these things, we're toying around with the Spirit of God in us, who is housed in us. We're grieving the Spirit of God. This is a subject that has got to be covered because it just seems like it's not serious anymore. But you know what? There's hope. The Bible says that the righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up again. Now, to the corrupt people who heard that and got excited, it's like, oh, I'm on 4. They're like, no, it's cool. I got a couple more times still. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Listen, because the end of the chapter, it said, the end of the verse, it says, but the wicked fall into mischief. It's kind of saying wicked people stay there. See, because some of you have this mentality, like, you're running things right now. It's hot for you. Like, or in some cases that means that it's not going well for you. But okay, whatever. Like, you know, you're running a show. You've got this one over there. You've got that one over there. Yeah? You have ways. But nobody knows about it. It's cool. You can keep it on the wraps. I do me. Yeah? God's still got my back. He loves me. Is it? Well, he does. It's true. But the Bible is clear. It talks about people who stay in that trash. And he said, listen, he lists fornicators, adulterers, and liars and all that. And he said, those people will not enter. They will not see the kingdom of heaven. People don't read that bit. It's scary. There's certain parts of the Bible that are scary. If you don't believe me, read Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26. I'm not going to say what it says. It's going to come up on the screen. Read that. Get back to me. There's certain parts of the Bible that are scary because they remind you that this is a relationship, and actually, you know, in a relationship that you can be left. But the thing about when God leaves, you don't want that. We shouldn't toy around with this thing regardless. The righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up. That's talking about the fact that, you know what? People who are on the pursuit, righteousness, living right, yeah, being in the right way. Your pursuit is about living right before God, according to the word. And sometimes you fall. You slip up. You know, you get into foolishness. But your mentality is to get back up because you realize, you know what, that's not me, number one. And number two, this is not good for my relationship. This is not sustainable. Is your life sustainable right now? Can you say honestly that you could go before God and not start a prayer with, Lord, look, I'm sorry, like, I won't do it again. Or begging God to get you out of something. And you were full on happy about it. Like, you were doing cartwheels. Like, you were going to be married in 6 months. And so to practice, yeah, you got involved a little bit. Oh, let's see how this one works. Let's figure some things out. We can't be remixing the word. There's a reason why abstinence and purity is mentioned. Because there's a relationship that we're preserving with Christ. Where he is able to guide us and lead us to that person in the most legitimate way. And when it happens that way, God is glorified in it. And you can have peace. Many of us won't even understand what that is, because at the end of the day, we're just out here living our best life. And for those of you who, you know, are hearing me talk about basically things alluding to sex, you know, this includes porn, masturbation, you know, looking at inappropriate images, all of these different things that are everywhere, that are temptations. Listen, if you fall into it, don't stay there. Don't stay there. Don't stay there. It's not worth it. Get around some good people, some people who are accountable. The Bible says, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. Get some godly counsel. Get around some people who can help you, pray for you. Yeah, who can just tell you some practical things. Get back to a place where you can learn to have a respect and a healthy mind towards people. Because I'm telling you right now, you don't want to get so practiced with just looking that it turns into murder. That it turns into something that now you have to spend the rest of your life trying to, you know, just rehabilitate and get back on your feet again. There is a way that seems right unto man, but the way thereof is destruction. God's way is a way that will ensure that we can have peace, that we can have the joy of the Lord. The things He has for us are good. We have to learn to trust Him. We have to learn to live by His standard. We have to learn to appreciate the standard of God's holiness, His separation, His mind to be pure and to think on good things. We spoke about that in another video. If there be anything pure, lovely, of a good report, like getting our mind into a place, it all starts in the mind first. We got to do this because you know what? This is how I like to think about it, and I'm going to leave it at this point. If you don't already have children, or you do, would you ever tell them to behave like you did when you were having your best life? Would you really want that for them? The way we're seeing it now, like, children are being sexualized and exposed to things at an age far younger than many of us. It's crazy. So they're already going to have to be dealing with things at an even younger age. And so if they fall into experiences and things that could really set a bad tone for their life, would you like that? You wouldn't. So why would you then promote the things that lead to that? How could you come up in here and talk about, oh, you know what? Nah, this is wrong. That is wrong. Nah, men shouldn't be treating women like this. Nah, women shouldn't treat men. Like, whatever your argument is, whatever your fight is, whatever your gripe is. But then you're out here doing you do the things that lead to that thing. You involve yourself in scenes and with people doing acts that lead to those things that you hate. Hypocrite. I'm talking to me too, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to present an issue with something, yeah, that affects me, or futuristically speaking, affects my children, but then I'm out here doing I'm doing the exact thing that leads to that. But I want them to have a good example. I don't want them to be like me. That's so trash. That's just utter trash. What's the point? How are you so you're just gonna invent a righteousness? You're just gonna manufacture it like Amazon? Just that Prime, there by tomorrow, for your child, but you're living trash. Like, you have an understanding of what He did for you on the cross. you fell in love with who God was and who he is because of his nature. I'm talking to you. I'm not discriminating against any type of Christian because, to be honest with you, everybody's at a different stage. You ultimately start shallow and you can move into a place where you appreciate God for who he is rather than what he does. And, the fact that he helped you escape is, sometimes we're just shallow. Like, we're stupid. We'll give God thanks that he helped us to escape robbing a bank. Like, that's how people use God's name. You say, oh, thank God. Like, thank God for that. I didn't get caught. Thank God I didn't get caught. It's a lot. But in order to take this topic seriously, we have to look at ourselves. And we have to look at our own habits. And we have to look at our weaknesses. And set the challenge. Like, at the end of the day, the Bible says something that, I remember when I heard this in church the first time, I was like, that is mad. It says, be ye perfect, as your Father in heaven is perfect. Like, I was just like, wait, sorry, what? Perfect. But that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be like, how? Because we're living by the Spirit. The Bible says the just shall live by faith. We're living by faith, and we're having faith that the Spirit of God is in us, is able to help us to overcome these things and live a life that is acceptable to him, that's pleasing, and that allows us to flow in the things and the gifts that he has for us. But it starts with them small habits, because remember, a look became murder. David wasn't at a rave. He was not at Penthouse. He was not at a bar crawl, in relative speak. He was on a roof, and he saw, don't get me wrong, what he saw must have been live, because clearly it made him think, nah, I gotta get this now. But what type of mindset did he have where he even believed that that was okay? He obviously had a pride issue there. He was lifted up by people and he was praised. He's king. Some of you get called king too much. You need to watch. Because there's only one king out here, and it's not you, fam. You can't bring yourself from the dead. Sorry, it's goodbye. You're not king. I know girls like to call men king. None of you are king. If you can die for me and come back from the dead and say, yep, it's cool, it's done out here. Eternity is yours. I might have to just switch up. Like, I might have to just give Jesus a call. But that's not happening. So nobody's king out here. You're not king. Especially if you're out here doing what you do and putting God's name on it. It's trash. I'm embarrassed for my own self when I look at parts of my own history where I thought it was acceptable to live a certain lifestyle because, well, you know what? I'm not really out here being too trash. I'm just having a good life. Trash. Rubbish. Who are you fooling? Who did I think I was fooling? One thing leads to another all the time. Then when you get to the other, you're like, well, I'm not at the other, I'm just at the other. It's not worth it. Especially because there's other people in the picture. This was the wife of a soldier. The woman might not have even have seen her husband come home at any given point. This is a big topic because you got to then question the fact that she was involved. But this is a king. There's a lot here. There's a lot. But look how messy it is to even think about describing. How do you recognize this? Is there something in your life that's this messy where you're just like, mate, I can't even like I look good, like I'm dressed up, yeah, I'm ready for work, like, but my life right now is so trash. How am I even doing this? Don't stay there. Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. He came that we could have a life where we could finally feel like we were free from our own trash, our own sin. Where we could finally be at a place where we could just live in peace and get to know and have a sense of purpose. But you can destroy your purpose. You can destroy your life. You can destroy someone else's life. Because that day that you chose to look, you acted on it. This is an important subject. And we've got to get to the place where you know, okay, you looked, you saw. But then you got to just be like, you know what, nah, cancelled. Let's work on it. Don't stay there. Don't stay there. If you're in a place right now that is just degraded, you're indulging in things that you know it's not correct. You got it under control because you're a big adult. You're big peoples, but you know you're living a trash life. You know that guy that you're with, you're not supposed to be with him. Like, he don't care about you. Because if it's before marriage and it's, you know, it's not in the marriage bed, it's not love, it's lust. There's no love there. They lied. We lied. Don't stay there. Please, do not stay there. Bring it to God. He said, cast your cares on him, for he cares for you. Bring it to God. Bring it to some people who can help you and pray with you. And establish that relationship with God. Because he came for you. He said to the woman at the well, who had a very deep history, by the way. He said, listen, if you knew who I was, you'd be asking me for water. Like, God is saying, if you knew who I was, what I can do for you, you'd be asking me for water. You'd be asking me for life. You'd be asking me for the things that you need. And you can find satisfaction through trusting in God for the things that you're trying to trust in that guy for, that girl for. It's not that everybody's wrong and bad. But you know what? If they're not pursuing God as well, I'm talking to people who are outright Christians. You use the name of Jesus a lot because you've been practiced in that skill. Yeah? If they're not pursuing God as well, and if they're not saying, nah, listen, this is the standard, and they're not putting up a fight to maintain it, accountability, and all these other things around them, listen, don't get yourself into problems. It's not worth it. God is not the author of confusion. And if there's confusion, nah, leave it alone. Go to God first. I'll leave it there, you know. Have a think about it. Take care.
Cause I need